Welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to talk about real estate issues that connect to the recent hurricanes that we've had in Florida. Things like the FEMA 50% rule, development implications, and insurance issues. If your property is in an area along the coast of Florida that was just ravaged from either Hurricane Helene or Hurricane Milton, or in some cases both, you might now be also hit with the fact that you need a FEMA 50% rule appraisal because your property is below the current base flood requirements. In Sarasota County, we're having calls come in from people who've been told that they need a 50% rule appraisal. Charlotte County has thousands of properties that now require a FEMA 50% rule appraisal. There's thousands of properties in Pinellas County that now need a FEMA 50% rule appraisal. So what you need to know about that is what the permitting office will first look at is the structure value that you're assessed. So it's not, the market value, the entire value of your property, it's just the value of the structure. And that's a number that for most properties, it's on your tax bill or on your property records page. And so in many cases, that's the number that can be used. You can get your permit and you don't need an appraisal. We tell people all the time when they reach out, you actually don't need our services. But for a lot of people, that number doesn't work. And that's where private appraisal comes in. So we do a tremendous amount of that work, and right now we're seeing a lot of work come in Hillsborough County. We are getting a lot of calls out of Pinellas County. A lot of property owners in Cape Coral now require a FEMA 50% rule appraisal. There was a policy change in the city of Cape Coral about how permits are issued on properties that were storm damaged, or even for properties that are below current base flood elevation, and it's not connected to the storm at all, but you just need a permit, and that permit is for a building that's below the floodplain. After all of the chaos with FEMA in Southwest Florida, in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian and since then, if you've seen it in the news, it's the flood insurance discounts are gonna go away. Everybody's flood insurance is gonna get more expensive. All of that, we're now seeing policy implications from each of the municipalities locally. And one of those implications is in the city of Cape Coral. If the property that you have in the city of Cape Coral does not have a structure value as part of the assessment, so the assessment doesn't include a detail of the building versus the land component. If you need a permit for that property, and again, that property is below current base flood elevation, you're going to have a FEMA 50% rule appraisal. This applies to residential condominium projects, commercial condominium projects, a lot of other types of properties where the assessment each year for tax purposes just happens to not include a breakdown of the land and building. This is different from years past. In years past, those property owners, the majority of the time, didn't have to get a FEMA 50% rule appraisal. But given that FEMA has been cracking down on municipalities locally, we're now seeing, in this case, City of Cape Coral say, okay, before we issue a permit on a non-conforming property for flood purposes, everything's got to have a FEMA 50% rule appraisal. We're not taking the liability of looking at that internally. We're going to require the owner to get that. We've seen this already on residential condominium projects that are 40, 50 units, 50,000, 70,000 square foot buildings, and one unit owner in that project wants to remodel a bathroom. That's all, but it requires a permit. That condo association collectively is being required then to file a FEMA 50% rule appraisal with the city. This is critical to know because it's going to mean that a lot of condominium associations each year or every 3 years maybe, should be getting a FEMA 50% rule, have one updated and on file. So it's similar to how insurable value appraisals work. As you may know, the state requires condominium associations to have an appraisal on file and updated every 3 years. That's part of statute in the state of Florida. What we're going to see is that policy for FEMA 50% rule starts to mirror a bit of what we see on the insurable side. And it will make a lot of sense for condominium associations to just have an updated FEMA 50% rule appraisal on file, similar to what they have for insurance appraisals. Most FEMA 50% rule appraisals can be done in a matter of days or weeks if needed, depending on the property. The majority of the time, it doesn't even require us as the appraisers to come out physically to the property. For example, in the aftermath of a hurricane, access to many properties just simply isn't available. And the value that we're solving for, the structure value, is the value before the storm. So sometimes looking at it in the aftermath of a storm wouldn't be all that helpful anyway. But the benefit of that is it allows us to complete those assignments really quickly. We can, again, often get them completed in a matter of days. We've done thousands of these type of appraisals previously, and we understand the regulations that the permitting departments operate under and what they need to see from a FEMA 50% rule appraisal. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy real estate content, information about Florida's real estate market and policies surrounding development and valuation issues, please subscribe to this channel. Also, please share this video with anyone that you think might also find it useful. And finally, if you have ideas about content, topics that you'd like to see covered, please share them in the comments section below.